Jake Morrison sat in his small office staring at the inventory report on his screen. Something was wrong. For the third week in a row, food supplies were missing from the warehouse. Not much, just a few nutrition bars here, some dried fruit packets there, maybe a couple of water bottles. Most people wouldn't notice, but Jake had been managing supplies on Frontier Station 7 for 5 years. He noticed everything. The station floated in the dark edge of human space, serving as a stopover point for cargo ships and a research outpost for studying alien cultures. It wasn't glamorous work, but Jake liked the quiet predictability of it. He'd left Earth after his divorce, looking for a fresh start somewhere far away from painful memories. The station gave him that. Every day was the same. Check inventory, process shipments, manage storage systems, go to sleep, repeat. But now someone was stealing, and that bothered him more than it should. It wasn't about the value of the missing items. The station had plenty of supplies. It was the principle. Who would steal food and why? Jake decided to find out. He spent his lunch break setting up a small camera in the corner of the main storage bay, hidden behind a stack of equipment crates. The camera was old, something he'd salvaged from a broken security drone, but it would work. He angled it to cover the food storage section and set it to record motion. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the thief. Maybe it was one of the junior staff members too proud to ask for help. Maybe someone had gambling debts. He'd seen it before on other stations. People got desperate in the void of space, far from home and family. The next morning, Jake rushed to his office before his shift started. He pulled up the camera footage on his personal tablet, fast-forwarding through hours of empty warehouse. Nothing, and then at 3 a.m, movement. Jake's finger froze over the screen. A small figure crept into the warehouse through a ventilation duct. The angle wasn't great, but Jake could see enough. It wasn't a human. The figure was too small, maybe 4.5 feet tall, with thin limbs and skin that seemed to shimmer slightly in the dim emergency lighting. An alien, a child by the looks of it. She moved quickly, almost frantically, glancing around with large eyes that reflected the light like a cat's. Her clothes were torn and filthy, hanging loose on her skinny frame. She grabbed nutrition bars from an open crate, stuffing them into a makeshift bag made from what looked like an old maintenance cloth. Her hand shook as she worked. Jake watched the footage 3 times. Each time his heart sank a little more. This wasn't some staff member with a problem. This was a kid, alone and terrified, stealing food to survive. He knew he should report it. Station protocol was clear. Any unauthorized aliens on board needed to be detained and handed over to the proper authorities. But something stopped him. The way she moved, the desperate speed of her actions, the fear in her posture even on the grainy video. It all screamed of someone running from something terrible. Jake made a decision that would change his life. He would go to the warehouse tonight and wait for her. Not to turn her in, but to talk to her, to find out what was happening. The day dragged on forever. Jake went through his usual routines, checking manifests, coordinating with incoming ships, processing supply requests, but his mind was elsewhere, thinking about the alien girl and what he would say when he saw her. That night, Jake positioned himself behind a large cargo container in the warehouse, near the food storage area. He'd brought a spare nutrition bar and a bottle of water just in case. The warehouse was cold at night, and Jake pulled his jacket tighter around himself as he waited. Hours passed. Jake's legs cramped and his back ached, but he stayed still. Then, just after 3 a.m, he heard it. The soft scrape of metal on metal as the ventilation duct opened. The alien girl dropped down onto the warehouse floor with barely a sound. She was even smaller in person, and Jake could see now that she was badly malnourished. Her large eyes were a deep violet color, and her skin had a faint silvery sheen. She wore what might have once been some kind of uniform, now ripped and stained. She moved toward the food storage, and Jake stepped out from behind the container. "Wait," he said softly. "Please don't run." The girl spun around, and the terror on her face made Jake's chest tighten. She dropped her bag and backed away, her whole body trembling. She raised her thin arms as if to protect herself from a blow. No, Jake said quickly, holding up his hands. "I'm not going to hurt you. I promise." She stared at him, her breath coming in quick gasps. Then she spoke, her voice high and breaking. Please, no hurt." Sorry. Zira, go, please." Her English was broken but understandable. Jake's heart broke at the fear in her voice. He slowly knelt down, making himself smaller and less threatening. "I'm Jake," he said gently. "What's your name?" "Zira," she whispered, still ready to bolt. Zira, I'm not going to hurt you and I'm not going to turn you in, Jake said. Are you hungry? She didn't answer, but her eyes flickered to the nutrition bar in his hand. Jake carefully placed it on the floor between them, then rolled the water bottle next to it. He backed away a few steps. It's yours, he said. Take it. Zira hesitated for a long moment. Then she darted forward, snatched up the food and water, and retreated to a safe distance. She tore open the nutrition bar with shaking hands and ate like someone who hadn't had a decent meal in days. Probably because she hadn't. Jake sat down on the floor, trying to look as non-threatening as possible. How long have you been hiding here? Zira swallowed a mouthful of food. Many days. Many, many days. Where did you come from? Her eyes filled with tears. Ship, bad ship. Zira, escape. Hide here. What kind of ship? Zira's face twisted with pain and fear. Slave ship. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. He'd heard rumors of slave trading in the outer sectors. Whispers about species that captured and sold sentient beings like property. The Dravix Collective was the name that came up most often. A brutal empire that humanity had carefully avoided conflict with. But hearing it from this terrified child made it horrifyingly real. Who did this to you? Jake asked quietly. Dravix. Zira whispered, and even saying the name seemed to cause her pain. They come to Zira World. Kill many, take rest, make slaves. Jake felt anger rising in his chest, hot and fierce. He looked at this small, frightened child and saw every injustice he'd ever turned away from. Every time he'd chosen comfort over doing what was right. Zira, he said firmly, meeting her eyes, I'm going to help you. I don't know how yet, but I promise I will. She stared at him for a long moment, searching his face for deception. Then slowly she nodded. It was a small gesture, but it sealed both their fates. Jake met Zira in the warehouse every night for the next 3 days. He brought her real food from the cafeteria, things that actually tasted good instead of just the plain nutrition bars. He brought her clean clothes, too, the smallest maintenance uniform he could find, though it still hung loose on her thin frame. Each night, Zira seemed a little less afraid. She started talking more, her broken English improving as she practiced. She told Jake about her species, the Kalari. They came from a world called Kalara Prime, a beautiful planet with purple oceans and forests that glowed at night. Her people were peaceful, she said. They grew food, made art, and lived in harmony with their world. Kalari no have weapons, Zira explained one night, sitting cross-legged on the warehouse floor while eating a sandwich Jake had brought. We no need. No war on Kalara. Everyone share. Everyone happy. What happened? Jake asked, though he already knew the answer would be painful. Zira's face fell. She set down her sandwich, her appetite suddenly gone. Dravix come. Big ships in sky. They say Kalari belong them now. They say we work for Dravix Empire. Did your people fight back? Try, Zira said softly. But Kalari no know how fight. Dravix have big weapons, kill many Kalari. Then they say stop fighting or we kill everyone. Jake felt sick. He'd heard about the Dravix Collective's expansion into new sectors, but the news reports always made it sound clinical, political. Territory disputes and resource allocation. Nobody talked about the real cost, the lives destroyed. What happened to your family? Jake asked gently. Zira was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Mama and Papa try protect Zira and brother. Brother named Kale, he younger, only 8 years. She held up her fingers to show the number. Dravix soldiers come to house. Say we go to camps. Papa say no. He push soldier. Soldier shoot Papa. Tears ran down her face, leaving silvery trails on her skin. Jake wanted to reach out and comfort her, but he didn't want to scare her. Mama cry and hold Papa, Zira continued. She begged them stop. They shoot Mama too. Zira and Kale see everything. Then soldiers take us, put us in transport with many other Kalari. Everyone crying. Everyone scared. I'm so sorry, Zira, Jake said, his own voice thick with emotion. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. They take us to big facility. So many people there. Not just Kalari. Many species. All slaves now. They put Zira in one group, Kale in different group. Zira scream for Kale, try to get to him. They hit Zira, make her stop. She pulled up her sleeve, showing Jake the scars on her thin arms, marks from shackles and what looked like electrical burns. Jake clenched his fists, trying to control his anger. Getting emotional wouldn't help Zira now. She needed him to stay calm and focused. How did you escape? He asked. Work in facility for long time. Many months. They make Zira sort salvage from broken ships. Very hard work. Hands hurt all time. Not enough food. Many people die. Dravik's no care. Just get new slaves. She took a shaky breath before continuing. One day they put Zira and other slaves on transport ship. Going to different place, they say. Maybe mines. Maybe factory. Zira no. Ship stop at this station for repairs. Zira see chance. You escaped during the repairs? She nodded. Guard no pay attention. Think slaves too scared to try. But Zira think maybe die trying to escape. Or maybe die slow in mines. Better to try. That was very brave, Jake said. Zira shook her head. Not brave. Just want to be free. Want to find Kale. He all Zira have left. Do you know where your brother is? Her face crumpled. No, after they separate us, Zira never see Kale again. No, if he alive. No, where they take him. Every night Zira think about Kale. Wonder if he's scared. Wonder if he have food. Wonder if he remembers Zira. Jake felt something break inside him. He'd spent 5 years on this station, going through the motions of living, keeping himself busy so he didn't have to feel too much. After his divorce, after losing custody of seeing his niece regularly, he'd built walls around his heart. Easier not to care, easier not to get involved, easier to just exist. But looking at Zira, hearing her story, those walls crumbled. This wasn't some distant tragedy he could ignore. This was real. This was happening right now, to millions of beings across the galaxy, and humanity, his people, were doing nothing. They traded with the Draviks, looked the other way, prioritized business and politics over basic decency. Zira, Jake said firmly, I'm going to help you get out of here, somewhere safe where the Draviks can't find you. She looked at him with those large violet eyes, hope and fear mixing together. Why Jake help Zira? Humans and Kalari strangers. Jake no Zira. It was a fair question. Jake thought about it for a moment. Why was he doing this? He could get in serious trouble. He could lose his job, maybe worse. The smart thing would be to walk away. Let someone else deal with it. But he couldn't. He thought about his niece back on Earth, about how he'd do anything to protect her if she was in danger. Every child deserved that protection, deserved someone to fight for them no matter what species they were. Because it's the right thing to do. Jake said simply, because you're a kid who's been through hell and you deserve better. Because someone has to stand up to bullies like the Draviks, even if it's just one person at a time. Zira studied his face for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised him. She moved closer and hugged him, her thin arms barely reaching around his chest. She was so small and fragile, like she might break. Jake carefully put his arms around her, feeling her shake with silent sobs. It's okay, he said softly. You're not alone anymore. I've got you. They sat like that for a while in the cold warehouse surrounded by crates and supplies, while Zira cried out months of terror and grief. Jake let her, knowing she needed it, knowing that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let yourself feel. When she finally pulled away, she looked exhausted, but somehow lighter. Thank you, Jake, she said. For be kind. For see Zira as person, not just slave. You were never just a slave, Jake said. You're Zira, you're a survivor, and we're going to make sure you stay that way. That night, after Zira retreated to her hiding spot in the maintenance tunnels, Jake returned to his quarters and started making plans. He needed help, someone he could trust absolutely. Someone with a ship and the guts to take on something dangerous. He thought of Lisa Grant, a cargo pilot he'd known for 3 years. She ran an independent transport called the Wandering Star, and she had a reputation for being tough but fair. More importantly, she owed Jake a favor. He'd once covered for her when she'd been late on a delivery, fudging the station records so she didn't lose her contract. It was time to call in that favor. Jake composed a message on his personal comm, careful to keep it vague in case anyone was monitoring. Lisa, need to talk to you in person about a sensitive matter. Can you stop by the station on your next run? It's important, Jake. He hit send and sat back, hoping he wasn't making a huge mistake. But when he thought about Zira's face, about her story, about all the other beings suffering under Dravik's cruelty, he knew he had no choice. Sometimes doing the right thing meant taking risks. And Jake was done playing it safe. Lisa Grant arrived at Frontier Station 7 3 days later. She was a woman in her early 40s with short gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She'd been flying cargo runs for 15 years, and had seen enough of the galaxy to be surprised by very little. Jake met her at the docking bay, trying to act casual. "Thanks for coming," he said. "Your message made it sound urgent," Lisa replied, studying his face. "You look stressed, Jake. What's going on?" "Not here," Jake said quietly. "Follow me." He led her through the station's corridors to his office, checking to make sure no one was following them. Once inside, he locked the door and activated a white noise generator he'd borrowed from the communications department. It would scramble any listening devices. "Okay, now you're scaring me," Lisa said. "What's this about?" Jake took a breath. "I need your help with something. Something that could get us both in trouble." "I'm listening." "There's a Kalari child hiding on this station. She escaped from a Dravik slave ship. She's 12 years old, Lisa. Her parents were killed in front of her. She's been living in the maintenance tunnels, stealing food to survive." Lisa's expression hardened. "Slave ship here?" "It docked for repairs 2 months ago. She got away during the maintenance cycle. And you want me to do what exactly?" "I want you to help me get her off this station. Take her somewhere safe, somewhere the Draviks can't find her." Lisa was quiet for a long moment. She walked to the window and stared out at the stars. "You know what you're asking me to do? Smuggling escaped slaves is a serious crime. If we're caught, I lose my ship. You lose your job. We both probably end up in a detention center." "I know," Jake said, "but I can't just let her stay here. Eventually, someone will find her. There are Draviks informants everywhere, and they don't take kindly to people who help their property escape." "Property," Lisa repeated, disgust in her voice. "That's what they call sentient beings. Property. Will you help me?" Lisa turned to face him. "I want to meet her first." That night, Jake brought Lisa to the warehouse. Zira was hesitant at first, hiding behind a cargo container and watching Lisa with suspicious eyes. "It's okay," Jake said gently. "This is my friend Lisa. She's going to help us." Lisa knelt down, making herself less intimidating. "Hi, Zira. Jake told me about you. I'm sorry about what happened to your family." Zira crept out slowly. "You help Zira escape?" "If I can," Lisa said honestly. "But I need to know something first. There are places in the galaxy where refugees can hide. Places the Draviks don't control. But they're far away, and the journey is dangerous. Are you sure you want to do this? Because once we start, we can't turn back." Zira nodded without hesitation. "Anything better than here. Anything better than be slave again." Lisa looked at Jake, then back at Zira. "All right, I'm in." Over the next week, they planned every detail. Lisa knew of a colony called Haven, hidden in a nebula that made navigation nearly impossible without specific coordinates. The Resistance operated from there, a loose alliance of species fighting against Dravik's expansion. They took in refugees and helped them start new lives. But getting to Haven was the problem. The station had security checkpoints for all departing ships. They scanned for unauthorized passengers, contraband, anything suspicious. And there were Dravik's patrol ships that randomly inspected cargo vessels leaving the sector. "We need to make Zira invisible," Lisa said during one of their planning sessions. "The scanners are looking for life signs. If we can shield her biosignature, she might pass through." "I might have something," Jake said. He accessed the station's inventory system, searching through the medical supplies. "Here, stasis pods. We use them for transporting critically injured patients. They suppress all biological functions temporarily, putting the person in a state of suspended animation." "That's risky," Lisa warned. "If something goes wrong, if the pod malfunctions—" "It's our best option," Jake interrupted. "The pod will be inside a cargo container labeled as medical equipment. No one inspects those too carefully because of contamination protocols." Zira had been listening quietly. "Zira, do it. Take risk." "No problem." "You're a brave kid," Lisa said with a slight smile. Jake worked his connections to forge the necessary paperwork. As supply manager, he had access to shipping manifests and cargo authorizations. He created a fake medical emergency on a mining colony 3 sectors away, requiring urgent delivery of a stasis pod and related equipment. Lisa's ship was scheduled to make the delivery. The date was set. In 2 days, the wandering star would depart with Zira hidden in the cargo hold. During those 2 days, Jake spent as much time with Zira as he could. He taught her more English, showed her pictures of Earth and other human colonies, tried to prepare her for what came next. "After we get you to Haven, what will you do?" Jake asked one evening. Zira thought about it. "Find Kale, somehow, find brother and be together again." That might take a long time. It might be very difficult, Zira no. But no give up. Kale only family left. Have to try. Jake understood that kind of determination. When you find him, tell him about your parents. Tell him they died protecting you both because they loved you. Jake have family? Zira asked. The question caught him off guard. Not really. I was married once, but it didn't work out. My ex-wife has a daughter from a previous relationship. I was close to my niece, but after the divorce, I don't see her much anymore. That's part of why I came out here, I guess. Easier to be alone. But Jake not alone now, Zira said. Jake have Zira and Lisa, you have friends. Jake smiled despite himself. Yes, I guess I do. On the night before the escape, Jake couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about everything that could go wrong. What if security detected Zira despite the stasis pod? What if there was a random inspection? What if the Draviks had spies on the station who noticed something suspicious? He got up and went to the warehouse for one last check. Zira was already there, sitting on a crate and looking at the stars through the large viewport. Can't sleep either? Jake asked. She shook her head. Thinking about tomorrow, scared but also hope. That's natural. I'm scared too. Jake's scared. But Jake's so brave. Jake helped Zira even though dangerous. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared, Jake said, sitting next to her. It means you do the right thing even when you are scared. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars. Then Zira said something that made Jake's throat tight. If Zira no see Jake again, want to say thank you. Thank you for see Zira, for care, for help. Jake gives Zira hope when Zira have none. That more precious than anything. You're going to make it, Jake said firmly. You're going to get to Haven and you're going to be safe, and someday you're going to find your brother. And maybe if the universe is kind, we'll see each other again. Promise? Zira asked. Promise, Jake said, knowing he might be lying but hoping he wasn't. The next morning, Jake moved quickly. He prepared the stasis pod in his office, running diagnostics to make sure everything worked perfectly. Lisa brought her ship into the docking bay right on schedule. They had a 4-hour window before her departure slot. Jake explained the stasis pod to Zira one more time. You'll go to sleep. It won't hurt. When you wake up, you'll be on Lisa's ship far away from here. Okay? Zira nodded. She'd changed into the clean clothes Jake had given her, and looked slightly healthier than when he'd first found her. But she was still too thin, still carried too many scars. Ready? Jake asked. Ready, Zira said. She climbed into the pod, lying back on the cushioned interior. Jake attached the monitoring sensors and checked the settings one more time. Then he paused, looking down at her small face. Hey, Zira, you're going to do amazing things someday. I know it. She smiled up at him. Jake already do amazing thing. Jake save Zira. We're saving each other, Jake said softly. He initiated the stasis sequence. Zira's eyes slowly closed as the pod systems engaged. Within seconds, she was in suspended animation, her biological functions reduced to nearly nothing. Jake sealed the pod and placed it inside a large cargo container marked with medical warning symbols. Then he and Lisa used a loader to move it onto the wandering star. I'll take good care of her, Lisa promised. I know you will, Jake said. Now came the hard part, waiting to see if their plan would work. Everything was going according to plan. Lisa had loaded the cargo container with Zira's stasis pod onto the wandering star. The paperwork was in order. Jake had checked and double-checked every detail. In 2 hours, Lisa would receive departure clearance and leave the station. Zira would be on her way to freedom. Jake sat in his office, trying to look busy while his heart pounded. He kept glancing at the time display, watching the minutes crawl past. Almost there. Just a little longer. Then his comm device buzzed. It was security. Jake, we need you at the main docking bay now. Jake's blood ran cold. What's this about? Just get down here. Commander's orders. He rushed to the docking bay, his mind racing through possibilities. Had someone found out? Had they discovered Zira? He arrived to find the bay in controlled chaos. Security personnel were everywhere, and ships were being held at their docking clamps, prevented from departing. What's going on? Jake asked the nearest security officer. Dravik's inspection, the officer said grimly. Commander Vrak showed up an hour ago with a squad of soldiers. Says they're looking for escaped slaves. We have to cooperate, it's part of the trade agreements. Jake felt like he'd been punched in the gut, of all the terrible timing. He spotted Lisa standing near her ship, trying to look calm but clearly tense. She caught his eye and gave a tiny shake of her head. Don't panic. Commander Vrax was impossible to miss. He was tall, nearly 7 feet, with dark armored scales and cold yellow eyes. He moved through the docking bay like a predator, examining ships and crews with casual menace. 3 Dravik soldiers followed him, carrying scanning equipment. Jake watched in horror as Vrax approached the wandering star. "This vessel," the commander said in heavily accented English. "What is your cargo?" "Medical supplies," Lisa answered steadily. "Headed for the mining colony at Kepler Station. They had an accident in the lower tunnels, multiple casualties." "I will inspect," Vrax said. It wasn't a request, Jake had to do something. If Vrax scanned the cargo hold, he might detect the stasis pod's power signature. Even if he didn't, he might want to physically inspect the containers. If he found Zira, it was over. Jake walked up quickly, forcing a professional smile. "Commander Vrax? I'm Jake Morrison, supply manager for this station. I need to speak with you about the inspection procedures." Vrax turned his yellow eyes on Jake. "What about procedures?" "Well, sir, medical cargo containers are subject to contamination protocols. We had an outbreak of calyx fever on a nearby station last month, and now all medical shipments require special handling. If you open those containers without proper protective gear, we'll have to quarantine the entire docking bay for 72 hours. That includes your ship." It was a complete lie. Jake prayed Vrax didn't know enough about human medical procedures to call his bluff. Vrax stared at him for a long moment. "This is inconvenient. I understand, sir, but regulations are regulations. I'd be happy to arrange for proper protective equipment if you want to wait. Should take about 6 hours to get everything set up." 6 hours that Vrax clearly didn't want to waste. Jake could see the calculation happening behind those cold eyes. The commander had other ships to inspect, other stations to visit. One cargo vessel carrying medical supplies wasn't worth the delay. "No," Vrax said finally. "I will inspect other ships. This one may depart." Jake kept his expression neutral, but inside he was celebrating. "Of course, sir. Let me know if you need anything else." He walked away before Vrax could change his mind, catching Lisa's eye and giving her a subtle nod. She understood immediately and began her pre-flight checks, but they weren't safe yet. Jake returned to his office and accessed the departure control system. He needed to get Lisa out of here as fast as possible. He pulled up her departure request and flagged it as urgent, moving her to the front of the queue. His comm buzzed again. This time it was the station commander, Captain Peters. "Jake, what's this about moving the Wandering Star to priority departure?" Jake had prepared a story. "The mining colony at Kepler is pressuring us. They need those medical supplies urgently. Multiple fatalities already. I thought it would be good for station relations to accommodate them." "Fine, but clear it with me next time. And get down to the fuel depot. We're having issues with the pressure regulators." "On my way," Jake lied. Instead, he pulled up the station's sensor systems. He could see the Wandering Star powering up, preparing for departure. He could also see Vrax's ship docked 3 bays over, and several other Dravik's patrol vessels in the space around the station. Even if Lisa got clear of the station, she might be stopped by one of those patrols. They could demand to inspect her cargo at any time. Jake needed to help her, but what could he do from inside the station? Then he had an idea. A risky, possibly career-ending idea, but he was already in this deep. Might as well go all the way. Jake accessed the station's communication system and triggered a false emergency alert. Warning lights began flashing throughout the fuel depot section of the station. Alarms blared. The automated system announced a potential fuel leak in Bay 7. Immediately, the station erupted into controlled panic. Security rushed to evacuate the affected area. Emergency crews scrambled to assess the situation. Ships near the fuel depot were ordered to move away from the danger zone. In the chaos, the Wandering Star received its departure clearance. Lisa didn't waste time. Jake watched on the sensors as her ship detached from the docking clamp and accelerated away from the station, moving fast. One of the Dravik's patrol ships noticed and changed course to intercept. Jake's heart sank. He watched helplessly as the patrol ship closed in on the Wandering Star, powering up its weapon systems. Then Jake did something crazy. He used his access codes to activate the station's emergency beacon, the signal used to call for help during catastrophic failures. The beacon screamed out into space on all frequencies, declaring a station-wide emergency. Every ship in the area had to respond. It was galactic law, even the Draviks followed it. The patrol ship hesitated, torn between pursuing the Wandering Star and responding to the emergency. While it hesitated, Lisa pushed her ship harder, racing toward the edge of the system where she could engage her faster-than-light drive. "What the hell is going on?" Captain Peter's voice shouted over Jake's comm. "Who authorized the emergency beacon?" "System malfunction," Jake said, already moving to his door. "I'm heading to communications to shut it down." But he didn't go to communications. He went to his quarters and started packing a bag. He'd just burned every bridge behind him. There was no coming back from this. Once they reviewed the system logs, they'd see he'd triggered the false alarms. He'd be arrested, questioned, probably jailed, unless he wasn't here when they figured it out. Jake grabbed his personal belongings and headed for the secondary docking bay, the one used for emergency shuttles. He found an old maintenance shuttle that hadn't been used in months. It was barely space-worthy, but it would get him off the station. As he worked on the shuttle's pre-flight, his comm buzzed again. This time it was Lisa using an encrypted channel. "Jake, we made it. We're clear of the system. The Dravix gave up the chase once we hit the jump point. Zira's safe." Relief flooded through Jake. "Good. That's good. Jake, they're going to know it was you. The false alarms, moving my ship up in the queue, all of it. What are you going to do?" "I'm leaving," Jake said simply. "Right now. Heading out in a maintenance shuttle before they lock down the station." "Where will you go?" Jake smiled despite the situation. "I was thinking maybe Haven sounds nice. If you'll have me." There was a pause. Then Lisa laughed. "You're serious? You're going to join the resistance. Why not?" "I'm already unemployed and about to be a fugitive. Might as well make it count." "You're crazy, Jake Morrison." "Yeah, well, I learned from the best. See you on the other side, Lisa." He ended the call and finished the shuttle's preparations. Warning messages were starting to flash on his comm device. Security was looking for him. They'd found the false alarm triggers. They knew. Jake launched the shuttle, using his access codes one last time to override the bay doors. The little ship shot out into space, its engines straining. Behind him, Frontier Station 7 grew smaller. Ahead of him lay the vast unknown. For the first time in 5 years, Jake felt truly alive. He'd lost his job, his comfortable life, his safe routine, but he'd gained something more important. He'd remembered what it meant to be human, to stand up for what's right no matter the cost. Somewhere ahead in the darkness, Zira was free. That alone made everything worth it. Jake set course for Haven and engaged the autopilot. It would be a long journey, days at least in this slow shuttle, but he had time to think about what came next, time to plan, time to decide what kind of person he wanted to be. He thought about Zira's brother, Kale, still trapped somewhere in the Dravix Empire. He thought about all the other slaves, all the other children suffering. One rescue wasn't enough. It was a start, but only a start. By the time Jake reached Haven, he knew what he had to do. The resistance needed people. They needed fighters, planners, believers. They needed humans willing to prove that humanity stood for something more than profit and politics. Jake was done watching from the sidelines. It was time to fight. Jake's maintenance shuttle limped into Haven's coordinates 4 days later. The journey had been rough, pushing the old vessel far beyond its design limits. But he'd made it. The nebula surrounding the hidden colony was beautiful, swirling clouds of purple and blue gas that hid the settlement from outside sensors. A resistance patrol ship intercepted him at the nebula's edge, scanning his vessel. "Unidentified craft, state your purpose, Minda," came the stern voice over the comm. "My name is Jake Morrison. Lisa Grant can vouch for me. I'm here to join the resistance." There was a pause. Then a different voice came on, one Jake recognized.
"Jake, is that really you?"
"Hey, Lisa, miss me?" She laughed. "You actually did it. You crazy fool, you actually came. Follow my nav beacon. I'll guide you in." The hidden colony was larger than Jake expected. Hundreds of buildings dotted the surface of a small moon, surrounded by defensive systems and camouflaged by the nebula's radiation. Ships came and went, a mixture of species and designs. This wasn't just a refugee camp. This was a functioning community, a home built by people who refused to give up. Lisa met him at the landing pad. Behind her stood a small figure Jake recognized immediately. Zira looked different. She'd gained weight. Her silvery skin had a healthy glow, and she wore clean clothes that actually fit. But the biggest difference was her eyes. The terror was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like hope. "Jake!" she shouted, running toward him. He caught her as she launched herself into his arms, hugging him tightly. "Look at you. Jake said, his voice rough with emotion. You look amazing. Zira feel amazing, she said, her English noticeably better. Haven is good place. Good people. Lisa say you coming. Zira almost not believe. I promised I'd see you again, didn't I? Yes, Jake keep promises. Over the next few weeks, Jake settled into life at Haven. The Resistance leadership welcomed him, especially when they learned about his skills with logistics and supply management. They put him to work immediately, helping organize resource distribution and coordinating supply runs. But Jake didn't just want to manage supplies. He wanted to do more. He attended tactical meetings, learned about resistance operations, and studied everything he could about the Dravix Empire and their slave trade networks. He also spent time with Zira. She showed him around the colony, introducing him to other refugees she'd befriended. There was a young Pelthian boy who'd escaped from the same facility as Zira. There was an elderly Corvin woman who'd lost her entire family. There were dozens of children from a dozen species, all trying to rebuild their lives after unimaginable trauma. They all have stories, Zira told Jake one evening as they watched the nebula's colors shift in the sky. All sad, all terrible. But here they safe. Here they can start again. What about you? Jake asked. Are you starting again? Zira was quiet for a moment. Zira try. Zira make friends. Zira learn new things. Teachers here helping Zira learn reading and math. But every night Zira think about Kale. Wonder where he is. If he okay. Have you asked the Resistance about finding him? Yes, they say they try. But Dravix have many camps. Many slaves. Finding one person very hard. Jake made a decision right then. What if we made it easier? What if we found out exactly where he is? Zira looked at him with wide eyes. How? The Resistance has intelligence networks, spies inside Dravix territory. If we give them something specific to look for, Kalari boy, approximately 8 years old, captured from Kalara Prime during the initial invasion, they might be able to track him down. Hope flared in Zira's face. You think possible? I think it's worth trying. Jake brought the idea to Commander Hayes, a grizzled human woman who led the Resistance's tactical operations. She listened to his proposal, leaning back in her chair and studying him carefully. You want us to dedicate resources to finding one specific slave child out of millions? She said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Jake answered. I know it sounds like a lot for one person, but think about it. If we can track him down, we learn about the Dravix's record-keeping systems. We learn about their transport routes, their facility locations. That intelligence could help us free hundreds or thousands of others. Hayes was silent for a long moment. Then she smiled. You're thinking like a Resistance fighter already. All right, I'll assign some of our intelligence people to it. No promises, though. It could take months. It took 3 months. 3 months of waiting, of hoping, of Zira asking Jake every few days if there was news. 3 months of Jake throwing himself into Resistance work, learning combat skills, studying tactics, preparing for the day when he might have to fight. Then finally, the intelligence team had a breakthrough. They'd tracked down records from the initial Kalara Prime invasion. They'd cross-referenced transport manifests and facility assignments. They'd narrowed down the location. Kale was alive. He was being held in a labor camp on a mining world called Draven's Rock, deep in Dravix-controlled space. The camp held nearly 3,000 slaves, mostly children and teenagers used for sorting and processing rare minerals. When Jake told Zira, she cried. Not tears of sadness this time, but relief and joy. He alive, she kept saying. Kale alive. We're going to get him, Jake promised. I don't know how yet, but we will. Commander Hayes called an emergency meeting of the Resistance Council. She presented the intelligence on Draven's Rock, including facility layouts, guard rotations, and transport schedules. This is one of their smaller operations, she explained, but it's still heavily defended. Any rescue attempt would be extremely dangerous. We'd need at least 20 operatives, multiple ships, and perfect timing. I volunteer, Jake said immediately. I figured you would, Hayes said with a slight smile. Anyone else? Lisa raised her hand. Count me in. Others volunteered too. Within an hour, they had a team. Within a week, they had a plan. It was risky, maybe even crazy, but it had a chance of working. The plan was simple in concept but complex in execution. They would pose as a Dravix supply ship, using forged credentials and a captured vessel. They would dock at the facility during a scheduled supply delivery, then split into teams. One team would disable the communications array, preventing the camp from calling for help. Another would take control of the main security station. The third, which included Jake, would locate and extract Kale and as many other slaves as possible. They had one shot. If anything went wrong, they'd all either die or end up as slaves themselves. The night before the mission, Jake sat with Zira under the nebula's glow. "I'm going to bring him back," he told her. "Your brother and as many others as we can save. What if something go wrong?" Zira asked, fear in her voice. "What if you no come back?" "Then you keep going," Jake said firmly. "You stay here, you grow up safe, you live the life your parents wanted for you. You don't give up. Promise me," Zira, promise. But Jake have to promise too. Promise to come back. "I promise to try my absolute hardest," Jake said, which was the most honest answer he could give. The mission launched at dawn. Jake stood on the bridge of the captured Dravik's vessel, now renamed the Freedom's Hope, as they approached Draven's Rock. His heart pounded. His palms sweated, but his resolve was steady. He thought about Zira, waiting back at Haven. He thought about Kale, somewhere in the facility below, probably not even knowing rescue was coming. He thought about all the slaves suffering across the galaxy, hoping that today they could give hope to at least some of them. Approaching the facility, Lisa called out from the pilot station. "Time to see if their security is as lazy as our intelligence suggests." "Dravik's facility, this is Supply Transport Delta 7, Jake said into the comm using the forged credentials. Requesting permission to dock. There was a pause that felt like an eternity. Then, "Permission granted, Delta 7. Proceed to Bay 3. They were in. As the ship descended toward the facility, Jake pulled on his combat gear and checked his weapon. Around him, the rest of the team did the same. They were ready. They were committed. "For everyone who can't fight for themselves," Commander Hayes said, her voice carrying through the ship. "For every child stolen from their home. For every life destroyed by greed and cruelty. Today we show them that the galaxy fights back. Today we bring our people home." The ship touched down in the docking bay. The cargo ramp lowered. And Jake Morrison, former supply manager who just wanted a quiet life, walked into battle. He was done running from his past, done playing it safe, done being a bystander while others suffered. Today he was fighting for something that mattered. And whatever happened next, he knew he'd made the right choice. Because sometimes being human meant more than just surviving. It meant standing up, fighting back, proving that compassion and courage could change the galaxy, one life at a time. The mission was just beginning. But Jake was ready. He was finally truly alive.